For decades, we've stared into the dark, certain that the universe was silent, certain that nothing out there cared that we existed. But then one faint shimmer at the edge of the Webb telescope's deep field changed everything. It wasn't a star. It wasn't a comet. It wasn't even supposed to exist. It pulsed. Not randomly, not chaotically, but rhythmically. Every 33 seconds. A cosmic heartbeat coming from an object drifting through interstellar space. An object humanity later named 3I Atlas, the third interstellar visitor ever detected. But very quickly, that name stopped mattering. Because nothing about this object behaved like rock or ice. Nothing about it obeyed physics the way everything else in our solar system does. When Webb locked its infrared sensors onto it, the data came back wrong. The thermal signature wasn't reflective, it was self-generated. This thing wasn't absorbing heat from the sun, it was making heat from within. Something out there was alive with energy. Scientists checked the instruments. Rechecked, re-rechecked. Everything was functioning perfectly, but the pulse was still there. Exact, algorithmic, like a code. And then came the second anomaly, narrow, focused energy bands hidden within the light spectrum. Not scattered like starlight. Not natural. They looked exactly like structured emissions. The kind we use for communication. The kind that suggest intention. At first, NASA thought it was an echo of our own signals bouncing back. A reflection. A misunderstanding. But no, these frequencies didn't match anything humans had ever transmitted. They weren't mirroring us. They were speaking long before we ever called. Teams ran Fourier transforms to strip cosmic noise from the incoming stream, and beneath all the chaos, they found structure. Mathematical repetition, too clean to be coincidence. Something someone had written a whisper into the light. For days, scientists argued about the implications. Was this intelligence? Instrument error? A natural phenomenon mimicking communication? Then, on day 43, everything changed. The luminosity of 3I Atlas spiked nearly 40% in under 2 minutes. The thermal signature surged outward, like a machine powering on, and then its trajectory shifted. Not by much, less than a degree, but enough to be deliberate. Objects in space follow gravity. They don't make choices. This one did. That was the moment the room fell silent. Wonder turned into something colder, something heavier, because the universe had just made its first move. For a brief window, Webb's spectrograph picked up something else: vibrational patterns deep inside the emissions. Patterns eerily similar to biological resonance frequencies. Not DNA, not amino acids, something older,
looks like we've got a
something
lock.
more fundamental. Oscillations that mirrored the rhythm of living systems. The light wasn't just reflecting off the object. It was responding like tissue reacting to a stimulus. That led to an unthinkable possibility. Maybe this wasn't a machine. Maybe it wasn't a spacecraft. Maybe it wasn't even built. Maybe it was alive. Debates raged for days. Astrobiologists insisted electromagnetic patterns could resemble life without being life. Physicists argued that resonance isn't proof of consciousness. But before any conclusion could be reached, the signal stopped. The pulse went flat. The thermal emissions dropped. But 3I Atlas didn't slow down, didn't drift, didn't cool. It simply went silent. As if it knew it was being watched. As if it was reacting to observation. Then came the event on Earth, one that terrified even the skeptics. Instruments inside the South Atlantic anomaly, the weakest point in Earth's magnetic
The
field,
expansion rate has
detected
been
ripples.
increasing.
Electromagnetic pulses perfectly
This is
synchronized
faster than
with
we
3I
predicted.
Atlas's
This changes
internal
everything.
fluctuations, as if the object and our planet were connected, linked by some resonance we didn't understand. No asteroid has ever done that. No comet has ever influenced Earth's magnetic field from millions of miles away. But this did, and it was only the beginning. A week later, something broke off on the trailing edge of 3I ATLS. A fragment small, silent, and perfectly geometric. When Webb captured the image, the room fell still. Smooth planes, sharp 90-degree angles, crystalline symmetry
seeing
no natural object in the universe should possess. It emitted no heat, no
The
light,
data
no
is off the
radiation.
charts.
It was a piece of shadow that forgot to disappear. Chemical analysis revealed atomic structures outside our periodic table, elements that shouldn't exist. And yet there it was, drifting behind the main body of 3I ATLS at a fixed distance, as if tethered by an invisible force. global observatories aligned their telescopes to look closer. Keck, ALMA, Mauna Kea, and together they discovered something astonishing. The object's rotation wasn't random. It was timed, precise, aligned to mathematical constants, pi, the golden ratio, prime number intervals. It was spinning in code, a message written not with language, but with motion. If you're still watching, hit the like button. It tells YouTube this kind of deep space content shouldn't be buried. Now, back to the impossible. NASA's Deep Space Network attempted a response. They sent prime sequences, binary strings, harmonic tones, a greeting written in logic, the only language we're sure any intelligence would understand. For hours, nothing. Then, exactly 1 hour after the final signal, 3I, Atlas, adjusted its spin rate by 0.003 degrees per second. Subtle, precise, intentional. It heard us. It understood us. It chose not to answer. That silence was louder than any message. Hidden data sets from past sky surveys suddenly resurfaced. Anomalies in 1,987, 1,998, 2013. Faint distortions following the same vector 3I, Atlas travels now. Back then, they were dismissed as noise. But each one coincided with mysterious radio bursts and gravitational deviations no one could explain. Meaning, this wasn't the first time it passed through our system. It had been here before. Watching, measuring, waiting. And if the trajectory was cyclic, it would come again. Over and over. Not as a traveler, but as a returned observer. And the world had no idea what it meant or what came next. As more observatories tracked its approach, a chilling realization emerged. 3I, Atlas wasn't heading straight for Earth. It wasn't even slowing down for us. Instead, its trajectory bent toward Jupiter, more precisely toward Europa, the icy moon believed to hold a vast subsurface ocean beneath miles of frozen crust. And beyond Europa, its path aligned almost perfectly with Enceladus, Saturn's own ocean world. Two of the most promising habitats for life in the entire solar system. Two worlds humanity has long suspected might already hold microbial ecosystems. It wasn't coming to us. It was going through us, like we were a checkpoint, a waypoint, a minor stop in a much older, much larger journey. Maybe Earth was never the destination. Maybe the oceans beneath Europa's ice were. And if that were true, then a terrifying question rose from the data. What if this object wasn't searching for life? What if it was seeding it? Independent research groups, anonymous, uncredited, terrified, published papers suggesting 3I, ATLS, might not be built at all, that it could be a form of plasma-based consciousness. A non-biological life form that evolved not from carbon, but from electromagnetic fields and stellar energy. Consciousness born inside stars. Intelligence shaped by magnetism, not molecules. A being older than planets, older than DNA, and infinitely more patient. If such entities existed, they wouldn't travel in machines. They wouldn't pilot ships. They wouldn't even understand the concept of technology the way we do. They would simply be drifting between stars, sleeping inside comets, awakening when someone somewhere observed them. And now, we had observed one. Meanwhile, Webb's gravitational readings revealed something even stranger. Space around 3I, Atlas curved more than its estimated mass allowed. This wasn't gravitational lensing from a heavy object. This was something manipulating space-time itself, an engine, or a biological trait, or something in between. Not propulsion, not thrust. A creature, swimming through gravity. Then the fragment behind it made its move. Silent. Geometric. Perfectly dark. It adjusted its distance, as if responding to something we couldn't perceive. It wasn't debris. It wasn't random. It was behaving like a sensor, a scout, a watcher watching us. Every telescope on Earth locked on. The rotation of the main body shifted again, this time aligning to primes in ascending order. A sequence so deliberate, so clear, that even the most skeptical astronomers admitted it looked like communication. And yet, every attempt we made to answer came back with the same response. Silence. Not ignorance. Not refusal. Silence as a strategy. Silence as measurement. During all this, a strange pattern began to ripple across Earth. Magnetometers around the globe detected oscillations in triplet pulses echoing the internal cycles of 3I Atlas. These pulses synchronized with Earth's own Schumann resonance, the natural electromagnetic heartbeat of the planet. It was as if Earth's field and the object's field were harmonizing. Some called it coincidence. Some called it interference. Others called it communication. Because hidden inside those ripples, scientists found something chilling and extremely faint echo in the 8.2 kHz range, the same frequency associated with human neural activity. Brainwaves, meaning the object wasn't just interacting with Earth's magnetic field. It was brushing against consciousness itself. Let that sink in. An interstellar object, millions of miles away, subtly vibrating the frequency of the human mind. Some researchers argued that if consciousness is electromagnetic, and many theories support this, then contact had already begun. Not through radio, not through math, but through resonance. A conversation happening inside us, without a single spoken word. If you're still here, you're the kind of person who looks for meaning in the dark. Tap subscribe because we go deeper than headlines. We go where science whispers. And the whispers were getting louder. A leaked draft from Caltech showed another twist. The biological signatures trailing from the tail of 3I Atlas contained structural echoes of Earth's oldest viruses. Not identical, but parallel. Patterns that shouldn't exist anywhere except here. Probability of random alignment, near zero. Which meant one thing scientists were afraid to say out loud. The building blocks of Earth's life might have come from something like this. Not random panspermia, not accidental contamination, but intentional delivery, a cosmic process older than evolution itself. Before the paper could be published, it was withdrawn, files deleted, researchers reassigned. But the data was already circulating quietly among astrophysicists around the world. And something else surfaced in those files, a hypothesis so bold it bordered on heresy. That 3I Atlas wasn't just a carrier of life. It was a gardener, a traveler that crosses galaxies, seeding biochemical potential across planetary systems. Leaving behind fragments, spores, energetic patterns, blueprints, waiting for the right conditions, then returning, after millennia, to check what had grown. If this was true, then humanity wasn't alone. We never were. We were part of an experiment older than Earth, and 3I Atlas wasn't a visitor. It was a parent, or something even older than a parent, a mechanism of the universe itself. As the object approached the orbit of Mars on its way toward Jupiter, its emissions changed again. The pulses flattened, the magnetic patterns smoothed. The fragment behind it slowed, almost as if preparing for separation. But the object wasn't dying. It wasn't powering down. It was waiting. For what? No one could answer. But then something happened that forced every research team on Earth to rethink the timeline. The object decelerated. Not because of planetary gravity. Not because of solar drag. It slowed itself, like a creature preparing for entry. Not into Earth's atmosphere, but Europa's. NASA's internal simulations showed it might pass within 1,000 kilometers of Europa's icy surface, close enough to release something into the cracks and fissures of its frozen shell, something that could seep into the ocean below. A perfectly preserved ocean, untouched for millions of years, waiting for a spark. And suddenly, everything humanity thought it knew about life, about origin, about evolution, about purpose began to collapse. Because maybe life doesn't start in oceans, maybe oceans are chosen. And maybe the spark of life isn't chemistry, it's contact. And as 3I Atlas drifted deeper into the inner solar system, something unexpected happened. The emissions from its core didn't intensify, they smoothed. The once chaotic waveforms flattened into a steady baseline, a calm that felt less like shutdown and more like preparation, almost as if the object was holding its breath. The fragment behind it, dark, geometric, impossibly precise, began to slow. Its orbit around the main body expanded slightly, as though loosening its tether. Engineers watching the live feed couldn't decide whether it resembled a seed separating from a parent or an instrument deploying into observation mode. No one wanted to say it aloud, but everyone felt the same silent truth. Whatever 3I Atlas was, it wasn't alone. And then came the discovery that changed everything. Data streams from ground-based arrays detected a faint but stable resonance buried deep within the magnetic noise trailing the object. A pattern, subtle, rhythmic, repeating at frequencies only detectable through extreme spectral compression. It was Fibonacci-based, perfectly structured, perfectly intentional. For a moment, scientists thought this was a continuation of the mathematical communication we had already seen. But then someone noticed something chilling. The pattern wasn't being transmitted outward. It was being transmitted
Okay, it looks like we've got a lock.
into the object itself, as if it were receiving instructions. Imagine that an interstellar object, traveling across light years, being updated in real time. A message from somewhere we can't see, to something drifting silently through our system. Where was the message coming from? What if the sender was thousands of years away? What if we were witnessing a communication chain older than humanity itself? The implications were unimaginable. At the same time, new gravitational readings showed something that defied every law of physics. Space-time around 3I Atlas flexed, as if the object was adjusting the fabric of space rather than moving through it. Tiny distortions appeared like micro-lensing events, inconsistent with its estimated mass. Gravity wasn't pulling it. It was manipulating gravity. That's when one researcher whispered what everyone else had been afraid to consider. This thing isn't moving through space. It's moving with space. A biological organism.
The expansion rate has been increasing.
Flow like a fish riding ocean currents. But
This
the
is
real
faster
shock
than we
came
predicted.
from Caltech's forbidden
This
dataset.
changes everything.
A separate team had finally broken through the interference surrounding the tail emissions. Buried inside the spectrograph were fragments, tiny, chaotic, but undeniably biological, in the strangest way possible. Not DNA, not amino acids, not proteins, but prebiotic patterns. Molecular echoes. The kind of raw informational architecture that life could emerge from if given the right environment. These weren't cells. They weren't. They were templates, blueprints, and they matched almost perfectly the oldest biochemical
What are we seeing
motifs
here?
found in Earth's most ancient stromatolite fossils. Patterns older than
The
animals,
data is off the
older
charts.
than plants, older than almost everything. Coincidence? Impossible. Probability? Zero. If the universe were leaving breadcrumbs, these were its fingerprints. Even more terrifying, the composition of those biotemplates indicated they weren't stable in warm environments. They would break down instantly near stars like ours. But inside Europa's frozen ocean or Enceladus' deep hydrothermal vents, they could survive. They could awaken. Suddenly, every earlier theory fell into a new, horrifying alignment. What if 3I Atlas wasn't born inside a star, but inside a cradle of ice? What if its existence was tied to worlds like Europa? Worlds where oceans lie beneath freezing shells, protected from radiation, isolated for eons. What if that was where these beings lived, evolved, and launched? A new interpretation formed. 3I Atlas wasn't searching for life or seeding life. It was returning home, or checking on the worlds it had seeded, or awakening something waiting beneath the ice, or replacing what was lost. Around this time, atmospheric arrays detected triplet pulses in Earth's ionosphere identical to the triplet pulses found in the object's modulation signals. They were weak, nearly noise, but undeniable. Earth and the object were resonating together again, like two instruments vibrating in tune. And hidden inside the waveforms was a faint structure, a near echo of the photogenic RNA sequence hypothesized earlier. A code built from light and vibration, something that could, under extreme conditions, trigger spontaneous self-assembly of proto-biological forms. In other words, a spark. The idea was outrageous, impossible, and yet the math worked. Life as resonance, life as vibration, life as activation. Suddenly, myths began resurfacing. Stories from ancient cultures describing stars that gave birth to men, fiery disks descending from the heavens, beings of light planting life in worlds. Tales dismissed as legend began aligning disturbingly well with the data. Maybe ancient witnesses weren't describing gods. Maybe they were describing cosmic gardeners, or entities like 3I Atlas during one of its earlier passes. Because if our sky surveys were correct, this thing had been seen before, more than once, long before telescopes existed, which raises a question humanity has never dared to ask. What if life on Earth didn't start here? What if it was delivered, not by accident, not by cometary impact, but intentionally by something like this? And if 3I Atlas was the seed bearer, What did that make us? By now, the object was approaching the orbit of Jupiter. Its emissions dropped near silence. The fragment trailing behind it drew closer, almost magnetically. Mission Control described it as nestling into position, like a module preparing for deployment. Europa filled more and more of the frame, its blue-white ice reflecting faint sunlight, cracks spiderwebbing across its surface like veins. Beneath those cracks lay an ocean 10 times deeper than Earth's, an ocean untouched for millions of years. Perfect. Still, waiting. Telescopes caught one final shift from 3I, Atlas, the tiniest flicker in the infrared spectrum. A pulse so faint it almost vanished into noise. But the timing, the rhythm, the spacing, it was the same as the first pulse Webb detected. A heartbeat, not fading, not weakening, calling to something beneath Europa's surface, calling to something that remembered, calling to something we have never known but came from. And then, without warning, its thermal signature dropped flat again. Total silence. No heat, no emissions. No movement beyond baseline drift. Holding position. Observing. Waiting. For what? For who? For how long? No one knew. No one dared to guess. But the world understood one thing. Whatever was about to happen would not be for us. We were witnesses. Not participants, not the audience. Just a minor species watching the universe speak to something older. Something that had been asleep beneath the ice for millions of years. Something that might now be waking up. As 3I Atlas began its final arc toward Europa, telescopes across Earth continued watching in breathless silence. The object drifted with the slow inevitability of something ancient, something that understood timing on scales humans could barely imagine. Every few minutes, faint microdistortions rippled through the surrounding space, bending starlight in patterns too deliberate to be random. Some astronomers believed these distortions weren't propulsion or communication, but scanning, mapping Europa's ice, sensing the ocean below, searching for something. And the closer it drifted, the clearer it became that its destination wasn't Europa's orbit, but a very specific region beneath the moon's cracked surface, Res Macula, a chaotic terrain of fractured ice believed to hide one of the moon's deepest subsurface cavities. Why that spot? Why that exact region? What could possibly be waiting down there? Before anyone could answer, an entirely new kind of signal emerged. Extremely low frequency, barely measurable, a whisper buried beneath layers of cosmic noise. But once filtered, the waveform revealed a structure even more chilling than what came before. It matched the rhythm of Europa's tidal flexing. In other words, 3I Atlas wasn't broadcasting. It was synchronizing, like a tuning fork aligning itself with the moon's natural vibration. That's when a team from JPL noticed something everyone else had missed. Europa's ice wasn't still. Cracks widened by fractions of millimeters, pressure levels shifted. Microwave reflectivity changed, subtle, gentle, but unmistakable. Europa was responding. Even more unsettling, the shifts weren't random. They pulsed in triplets. The same triplets seen in the object's emissions. The same triplets seen in Earth's magnetic ripples. 3 pulses, 3 echoes, 3 worlds, resonating together. Suddenly, the earlier theory, the one everyone had dismissed as too extreme, no longer seemed insane. This wasn't a visitation. This was an activation event. A cosmic trigger sequence unfolding across the solar system. And humanity was standing in the middle of it. Then came the moment many researchers would remember for the rest of their lives. As 3I Atlas slipped behind Jupiter's radiation belt, Webb detected a faint stream of particulate emissions trailing from the object, tiny crystalline forms drifting into space, glinting faintly. They didn't behave like dust or ice. They behaved like spores, dormant, inert, waiting for the right environment. These particles weren't moving toward the Sunday. They were drifting precisely, delicately toward Europa's gravitational well. A gentle rain of impossible seeds descending toward an ocean untouched for millions of years. A gardener returning to tend its garden. Even the skeptics could no longer deny the possibility. Space agencies across the globe issued classified statements. Military groups entered silent readiness. But nothing, no probe, no satellite, no weapon could approach the object without being shredded by Jupiter's radiation or lost in the moon's chaotic gravity. Humanity could do nothing but watch. And as we watched, Webb's final high-resolution capture showed something no one had been prepared for. The trailing fragment, the black geometric shard, detached completely from its stable orbit and began drifting downward, straight toward Europa. Silent, perfect, purposeful. Unlike the main body, this fragment emitted no thermal signature. It reflected no light. It registered almost as a void, an absence more than a presence. And yet its path was precise, guided by a force we couldn't detect. Some researchers believed it was a probe. Others believed it was a key, a seed, a trigger, a messenger, a descendant, or an ancestor. Because hidden inside the last spectrographic sweep before signaling, analysts detected structural harmonics nearly identical to the photogenic RNA architecture theorized earlier as a template encoded not in matter, but in resonance. A biological blueprint written in vibration. The final twist came as Europa slipped out of direct view. Several arrays on Earth detected a faint, wide-band pulse echoing across the solar system, low, stable, impossibly smooth. It wasn't coming from 3i. It was coming from beneath Europa's ice. A response. Something down there answered, not loudly, not aggressively, but with the soft certainty of something awakening after a very, very long sleep. Was it life? Was it consciousness? Was it something seeded ages ago? Or something placed there intentionally waiting for the return of its cosmic? No one knew. No one could know. But here's what terrified even the most seasoned astrophysicists. The frequency of the return signal matched the heartbeat pulse of 3i Atlas. Perfectly. A call and an answer. And then the object dimmed. Its emissions vanished. Its pulse flattened. Its gravitational distortions faded. 3i Atlas didn't die. It simply slipped back into silence. Observers watched as it turned slowly, elegantly arcing away from Europa and angling into a new outward trajectory. Not escaping, not retreating, just leaving. With the quiet confidence of something that had completed its purpose, it accelerated gently, riding gravitational currents like a creature gliding back into the cosmic ocean. No farewell signal, no final message, just that same ancient silence. Except for one thing. Before it passed beyond Webb's visual limits, the telescope captured a final flicker, 3 pulses of faint light, evenly spaced, perfectly timed. Noise, according to official statements. But to those who had been watching since the beginning, it felt deliberate. A signature, a reminder, a whisper from the dark. We're still here. Not a warning, not a threat, but a truth that the universe is not empty. It is alive with purpose, with memory, with intention. And that our life may have never been local, never been random, never been ours. Maybe we were written long ago. Maybe we were planted. Maybe we were part of a cycle older than Earth itself. If 3i Atlas has been returning for centuries, if it has seeded worlds across the galaxy, if Europa just answered its call, then the real question is not what is, but what happens next. When the universe decides we're ready for the next stage, or worse, when it decides we're not. Because sometimes the greatest discoveries are not revelations, they are reckonings. And as we stare into the infinite dark, one truth echoes louder than everything else. The dark has been staring back, all along,